going. You'll be amazed.
Okay. Do it again. All right.
We need more than one guitar part. There'll
Okay.
be somebody playing single notes, somebody playing chords, and they'll mix them together.
Okay. And let's just pick the mother of all funk chords. Let's pick a ninth chord.
The next two women on stage will be from Brazil. One is called Adelia Borges and the other is called Paula Dipp. One was the student of the other. They're both critical to that's what I'm saying. I felt a sort of criticism towards the colonization as we do in design from the Western Europe to the rest of the world. Adelia Borges, who's going to talk first, is a curator and a journalist. And the title of a lecture, of both lectures, are so very beautiful that I want to tell. Miss Adelia Borges is going to say, the title is "Design Should Not Be an Esperanto." Please welcome on stage.
Hello, I'm very happy of being here. Thank you, Richard, for inviting me. And when Richard invited me, he asked me to open the section dedicated to access to cultures. Then I began wondering, what does it mean, access to cultures? And what we see is that mainly when we say access to cultures, we speak about this expression is usually regarded as championing the access of the poor population to culture. This view originates in a dual principle. This principle is there is a part of the population that lacks culture, them, and another one, us, those who possess culture. I would like to invert this equation and talk here about the right all inhabitants of the world have of having their cultures recognized as such. Or, look at it from a different angle, I would like to talk about our right of access to cultures of the world in their rich polyphony and diversity. I think this will demand a big dedication on our part, as the world has been conceived up to now in a different form. The experience of colonization is nothing but an attempt to impose a new way of life to the others, to the uncivilized people. This procedure is very well exposed by the great author Amadou Hampâté Bâ from Mali, who represented his country for many years at UNESCO. He says, one of the main objectives of all colonization under any sky and in any period of time has always been to start by interpreting the conquered terrain. First, they have to root out from the spirit, as if they were weeds, values, habits, and local cultures, so that they saw in their place the colonizers' values, habits, and culture, considered as superior and as the only ones that have validity. Also quoting another writer, the Italian anthropologist Massimo Canevati, those who have been colonized have had, historically, as their only alternative to adopt the colonizer's thought. Either you were identical, similar, or you were eliminated. So if you are identical, you are not, we are denying, you are an Esperanto. We are, you have to, all of us would have to speak the same language. I think the effects of colonization extend themselves beyond the political victory of independence movements. This can be felt very strongly in the economical domain and also in the cultural domain. The power to define what is and what is not culture has remained in the metropolis. Cultural flows were unidirectional, coming from a few centers, remarkably London, Paris, and later New York as well, to the so-called periphery. In this division, the Southern Hemisphere was left with the role of being an exporter of raw materials and importer of finished goods, lifestyles, and trends. If we think about Brazil, the situation was more or less like this. But I think this one-way route from the north to the south is changing. Macro transformations in economy, politics, communication, etc., are leading cultural exchanges to become multidirectional. So, these exchanges are leading us to a multipolar world. And this situation brings some challenges and opportunities for the design field. Historically, designs created in Latin America, Africa, South Asia, Oceania were sorely disregarded. Objects we have created for our daily lives, logos we have created for our brands, signs we have developed to publicize our ventures were simply ignored. We can change it now, but we have to do this in a way that will not repeat the regard of colonial past. Let's take the example of one field of design, this crafts revival has been taking place in Latin America, South Asia, and Africa mainly. It's a design based on local knowledge and crafts. But I think that this word crafts deserves a little explanation. In the South, when we say crafts, we mean collective initiatives containing all components related to problem solving, to proper use of raw materials, to problems related to production techniques, etc. In a kind of production that is often made in large series, sometimes using not just hands, but also tools and machines. It's pretty different from the crafts seen from an European perspective. I am now traveling in many parts of Brazil to interview people for a book I am writing about crafts, design, and social innovation in my country. Let's have a look on some places and some faces of artisans that I have been in touch lately. Then I think you will understand better my perspective. Here, one of the biggest slums in Rio de Janeiro, where this group of artisans work now for almost 30 years, doing textile stuff. Then I went to Amazon, in a place, few population, the forests very present. And how should we do what they are doing with the raw materials we can find there? This is another location in the north part of Brazil, a very poor area, where these women made the dolls, some dolls, textile dolls. And this is another place, also in a very poor region, with this golden grass that grows in this region. Well, some of these photos were taken in workshops conducted by Brazilian or foreign designers in search of the preservation of productive techniques which had been passed down through generations, but with the incorporation of new elements of design. They are making use of the potential of local materials, maybe natural, as this one, maybe artificial, as this cardboard, recycled cardboard. They are improving the standards of quality of the product. They are developing graphic and packaging design for the artisanal pieces, and they are helping to anchor the formal references of the objects in local landscape. A report in 14 Latin America countries calculated that the artisans represent 6% of general population and 18% of the economically active population. So when we speak about crafts in Latin America, we are speaking about reducing the exodus of the population from the countrysides to the cities. We are speaking about something that generates a great social and economic impact, and something that has a relevant cultural significance. I consider this report very, very important. I have been one of its warmest defenders, proclaiming it as a journalist, a lecturer, a curator, and in my 4 years passage as director of the Brazilian Design Museum. Here, one of the exhibitions I have made there on textile design. However, there also have been many mistakes, many bad experiences, and I think that they come from the lack of a real dialogue, the lack of real respect for local cultures. Some teams are going to communities, taking with them ready-made projects, so the artisans end up elaborating with their own hands something that others have created. This posture, in this posture, designers or design students come with their brain, and crafts people only with their skills, their hands. It's common to see, I have few time, I think that if the artisans are seen as mere suppliers of labor, the designers and manufacturers must make this clear. And they should not call their projects social design. And also they should obey the laws concerning labor. I think we must urgently reflect upon this encounter. And as well, we have to share methodologies which can allow a true dialogue. Powerful voices are making their contribution. For instance, Bruce Nussbaum, the North American journalist, he wrote this, and he says, should we take a moment now that the movement is gathering speed to ask whether or not American or European designers are collaborating with the right partners, learning from the best local people and being as sensitive as they might be to the colonial legacies of the countries they want to do good in. And he asks, might Indian, Brazilian, and African designers have important design lessons to teach Western designers? 2 years before, the English author John Takara had already given his view. The most powerful lesson for me, after 20 years working as visitor on projects in India and South Asia, is that we have more to learn from smart poor people on things like ecology, connectivity, devices, and infrastructures than they have to learn from us. About 80% of the world's population lives with less than 10 US dollars a day or less. What objects, visual signs, and systems have them developed to be used in their daily lives? I think we have to unveil their solutions as manifestations of creative intelligence. I began researching popular objects made in Brazil a decade ago, and it's amazing how they can surprise us with smart solutions, how they can teach us. Here we see barbecue grills made of discarded materials, sold by something around 2 or 3 euros. Now these objects belong to a collection I am curating in a new museum in São Paulo. We have showed these exhibitions in these devices at the exhibition Puras Misturas, Pure Blends, that I have curated last year in this new museum. Here we see a cart for selling coffee in the streets. Some of the objects we saw there. Also popular stools. I think that some of them show very sophisticated formal solutions and also lessons of ergonomic understanding. And sometimes these creations are reappropriated by trained designers in Brazil. We have also a wonderful production of stools that are still today made by the indigenous peoples in the Amazon region. At this exhibition, we have mixed them all, displaying the same plane in the floor. As I said in the beginning of this talk, what is in question is our right of access to the cultures of the world. Professor Ranjan, who spoke yesterday, he made a mapping of artisan skills all across India and published the results of this in the book Handmade in India. I wish I had access to the wonderful things he must have found. In the same way, I have access to Italian furniture exhibitions or to Apple's new products. And I do not have anything against them. I do love them both. I'd like to know more about the work of groups such as Popular de Lujo from Colombia, created by 3 graphic designers to investigate, record, and publicize graphic works in the streets of Colombian cities. I am now getting in touch with a collection of African popular design, and I am amazed with some solutions they have. Here we see bracelets made of PVC plastic pipe from Namibia, serving scoops that reuse the aluminum and also the plastic parts of pots from Niger, and plastic utensils for saving water to wash, used to wash the hands from Senegal. I think that yesterday I was very impressed with the talk of Oliviero Toscani, and I think that maybe the main contribution he made is to show the diversity of the human being. He brought to the advertisement field, which was dominated exclusively by beautiful and young white people, he brought to this field our incredible diversity. And he does it in a way that he doesn't hide our problems, but he shows our problems, our pain, but also he shows our dreams. He shows that our world is bigger than the world where we live in our daily life. And I think that we, together, should do this in the design field. So we would be able to see in magazines, museums, seminars, publications, the objects and visual systems generated by social entrepreneurs in countries like Mauritania, Ghana, Kenya, Tanzania, Burkina Faso, Mali, Mozambique, Congo, Vietnam, Cambodia, Peru, Mexico, Chile, Uruguay, Paraguay, Argentina. And I think that if you are speaking about access to cultures, we must understand that access entails the end of boundaries. And there is a boundary of prejudice as well, which we must tear down, so we can finally see the creations of the other 90% of the world population in their real qualities. Design can play a key function in creating a more diverse and sustainable cultural panorama instead of an uniform Esperanto. Let's now diffuse and celebrate the diversity of our design. The inclusion of emerging countries as important partners in the world set is transforming many things, and it ought to shake design concepts as well. Overcoming colonialism and a geopolitical reconfiguration of the world are finally bringing us to a non-hierarchic vision of cultures. We have this opportunity today. Let's use it wisely. Thank you.
One question before I ask you to sit up here, because we have some time left. Can you name a good example of an intervention of a Western designer in a second or third world country? Something you really like?
I think I would not like to point one example of bad or of good design, but what I think is that the interventions, the designers that come, they have to spend some time. They have to look, they have to have this curiosity that Michael Wolff was telling, and they have to have compassion with the people. And sometimes, what I most see is they come as they were superior. And then they took some photos of people, and then it's so nice, it's so, oh, how good, he's doing good, and so on. And I think things must go deeper.
And do you think this feeling of superiority, is that something that designers have, or is it something that Western people have?
Designers have. I think
Please come and sit.
I think that trained people, because in Brazil we have trained people and we have unliterated people. And I'm not out of these people that sometimes have prejudice. And I think we have to make it in another way.
We will discuss later. Please have a seat.
Thank you.
So I can introduce Paula Dipp. Mrs. Dip is I didn't take my paper, excuse me. Mrs. Dip calls herself a social designer. There she is, former student of Mrs. Borges, and her title of the lecture, I told both lectures had a beautiful title. I like this one as well. It's called Author